So I wanted to create a new video about like how would I build a business knowing what I know today? Like, what do I share? And I'm probably going to forget some things, but I didn't want it to be about all the things I'd done in the past as well. I'd like you to get some value, and if you've watched the videos, you'll see a progression of me learning things and then implementing them. But if you have to wait till the end of 30 businesses videos, then you're probably going to think to yourself, well, it would have been, a long time to wait. And I'm probably going to talk about each part of what succeeded and failed in those videos in more depth than I am in this video. But I think that it's valuable to see it now, and if you miss context inside of what I'm sharing about in this video, then definitely go and look in those other videos, and you'll learn more, or ask a question. So there are many things you need to get right in a business. You need to get your brand right, your team right, your name right, your marketing right, your product right, the structure right, your legals right. There's a plethora of things to get right. And I think that having seen many people be very, very successful and having seen several of them fail, I think that the most important thing to get right to start off with is your mindset, your team. Because if you don't plan to succeed, you plan to fail. Or if you don't live in your future, you automatically live in your past. And if you have never been a successful business person, or even if you have, you're most likely to replicate the things you've done in your past as opposed to the things you have no idea that you don't know, the things that are going to make a difference in your business now. And I'm going to leave it at that, because that could be an entire video just on itself. And I might turn that into a video now that I think about it. Now, once you've planned to succeed, in other words, you've got a sensational team, you've got a sensational group of people around you, and that's not team in the business, that's team in life. Now the next thing is, what's the next most important thing? And that is niche. And I never really got niche. I have to admit, I had no idea what the hell find your niche meant. But the best explanation I have about business, or what it takes to create a successful business, is that it's like painting. 80% of the work is the preparation. So prepare. You don't have to think of the $1 million, the $1 billion, or the $100 million idea. You have to think of 50 of them. You just have to think of one. And you want to get it right. Now, you don't want to analyze the living daylights out of it such that you never actually achieve it. What you're looking for is that bit, that sweet spot of get it right in the planning stages. Get all the things that are important, and the niche is super important. A lot of people want to do the job that has them look good, the same job that everyone else has got. Well, that's not a smart move, because now you're competing against everyone else. You want to do a job that no one else has thought of doing, maybe from a perspective that no one else has thought of doing, no one wants to do. Now, I guarantee you, once you become successful, they'll want to do it. But before then, they won't. And what do I mean by niche? Lycum PNG, which I haven't created a video for at the time of this recording, is a tourism business in Papua New Guinea. It is very niche in that it was specifically designed such that it markets tourism to Papua New Guinea. So that's a challenge. There's a view in the world that Papua New Guinea is a dangerous place, but it's an incredibly beautiful place. And what we recognized was that people are not marketing the country very well, or they're not trying at all. The content that they have is if they do have it, is generally dangerous, or it's adventure driven. It's not tourism driven. It makes it not relatable, and the other thing is that it's very difficult for local tour operators to operate. Firstly, because there is very low numbers of tourism in the world, to the country, so they're not as experienced. And not only that, the banking system is not well connected to the rest of the international markets. So credit card transactions are a challenge. The local tour operators, they often make mistakes. They're not really 100% across how to deal with Westerners unless they're regularly dealing with them. And there's just, charging a foreign credit card is a problem. And you get this situation where sometimes foreigners do a direct deposit and they don't see their money again, which is why it's a good idea to pay with credit cards. You can get a charge back. So we build our business the way we market it. We find really good local tour operators. We work with local the hotels. We have a concierge product. In other words, because there's such a small amount of tourism that the hotels don't have concierges that are focused on tourists. So if the tourists want to go and do a tour, there's no one to call. There's no one in this hotel that knows. So we have that product. And then we work with local tour operators to sell their tours. And we pick winners, ones that got people who, they listen to the advice, they do what they say they're going to do, they charge reasonable prices, they don't rip off the tourists, if they make a mistake, they provide a refund, that sort of stuff. That's our niche. We do rugby league tours. No one else is doing them to the country. It's an interesting driver of tourism to Papua New Guinea. And we look to work with the locals and the expats. No one was trying to do that. That's the niche. Bronze Betty's another business that I haven't created a video on. That's a bronze and brass manufacturing company. And its niches, you could say, is the brand, but it's not the niche. The niche is that I got on a motorbike, a scooter, 150cc Vario scooter, and rode 12 hours in a single day from Bali into East Java to find bronze manufacturers, bronze smelters. And we found them. I rode 10 hours the next day looking for them all, and then 12 hours back to Bali the day after that. So 40 hours in a few days on a motorbike, and that's the niche. We know those people. And then I got back and flew to Surabaya, got on a scooter, rode 8 hours to find a brass manufacturer, pretty much the largest brass manufacturer in the country. And those, when I rocked up there, the interpreter that they'd bought out said to me, "What the hell are you doing here? Like no one comes here. First of all, it's so remote, and second of all, did you really ride a scooter here?" And my eyes were black. Like my eyes were clean, but the rest of my face was black from riding on this road. And it was so remote that they mined salt by hand. You could see them out in these huge fields, mining salt. Sorry, it's got a bit windy there. Almost blew the camera over. So that's niche. We make products that you can't buy. We manufacture dinosaurs for museums. We manufacture door handles that are super unique. And we can do that. No one else can. Most other places buy their product in. We don't. We manufacture it. We manufactured Farlap's horseshoe this year. From a real scan of one of the real horseshoes from Farlap. We ship product to Kuwait and Denmark and Florida and New York, all sorts of countries and all sorts of places all over the world, because we make unique door handles. And initially I didn't think that would be a big area, but people consider a door handle an investment, especially one on their front door. Restaurants do, themed locations do. We didn't consider that. That's their niche. Red Dog Technology, which I also haven't created a video on yet, and I will. Its niche, and this is an interesting one, we didn't even know what our niche was in this one. And this is why niche is so incredibly important. And you should always be looking for your niche. And Red Dog Technology was a technology business that I built out with a friend of mine, Jason, and he's still my friend today. We still work together today. We started it in about 2002-03, but it didn't really get to where it was until to its successful business model until 2005 or 6. And what Jason and I noticed is that if you're an IT provider, you sold your time by the hour. So you made more money when your customer was making less because their IT was down. And you made less money when your customer was operating. which to me just sounded weird. But you really want to have those outcomes aligned. And what we noticed is that IT companies wouldn't tell their customers that the choice in technology was a bad idea, because if it was a bad idea, they'd make more money from it. And so they'd often offer the cheapest option, not telling them what the real cost was going to be. And we decided that what we would do is work out what the real cost of an IT solution was. The cost of leasing, maintenance, replacements, support, warranties, every cable, everything. And we decided to price it out at a flat monthly fee. So our customer would call up and say, look, we want a laptop, and with this bit of software on it, whatever the software they wanted, and all the solution that they wanted, and we would provide it for them, and then they would then pay a monthly fee for that. And we had like standard solutions. We had phone systems and routers and modems and Wi-Fi networks and laptops and screens and hard drives. We did everything. And a lot of our solutions we invented ourselves because they didn't exist at the time. But we thought our niche was the products that we'd developed. The phone system. And it was a great product. The firewalls were a great product. Like, they were very niche, high quality products that you could use. And we went national in 12 months and international 6 months after that. We were incredibly successful. But what we never worked out was that our niche was the software that we'd developed, because today IT departments as a service where you pay a flat monthly fee is normal. Back in those days, everyone thought we were insane. Everyone thought that we would go bankrupt very, very quickly, because we owned everything from the wall outwards. So if there was a problem with a laptop, if it took us more time to switch it, to fix it than it would be to switch it, we'd just send the customer a new laptop. They'd just return the old one. They'd pay the same fee. We would work out what the problem was physically, instead of them being stuck with a broken machine or whatever. So that we just had this huge economies of scale. And our business was worth, when we sold it, was worth a tenth easily of what it would have been if we'd actually worked out what our niche was. And I have seen a lot of businesses, other than having not a good team, with the founders, that support network around them, is when they don't get their niche, they're not successful. Now, we got successful even though we didn't know our niche. But if we'd sold our software to those other IT providers and said, listen, just use our software. It's got a help desk in it. It's got a pricing system in it. It'll tell you how much it costs to run your business. So you can charge a flat monthly fee. We could have sold it to every IT company on the planet. We would have made huge sums of money just by making that stuff possible, sending out invoices, paying us a fee. I mean, at the time, I think the help desk that we were using was really quite reasonably priced, because the world of IT hadn't exploded yet. But at the peak, I think it was $40,000 a year to use this software. We just missed it. So if you want to know what I think the most important thing about business is, its niche. And you should spend time on it, even after you've built your business. And I do that still today. Because for Bronze Betty, where I said the niche was the manufacturing, I didn't know that. Initially I thought it was brand, and just time in the market. Just day in, day out, Bronze Betty turns up. You get a problem, you get a customer whose crab got damaged in transit, and they're in the United States, and we're in Australia. So we're shipping out of Australia, and they complain, and they think that we're not going to send them a new one. So I send them, I get them sent a new one. It comes across my desk because the guy made quite a strong complaint on the internet, and he was shocked. Now, I thought that was our niche. Now, it is a little bit, but it's not the thing that differentiates us from everyone else. Now, I might be wrong still today. And that's the beauty of niche, is that generally if you've got a business that's successful, there's a niche, you've got your niche somewhere in that vicinity. There was a business that I worked with to reinvent several years ago called T Street. And I haven't created a video on that either yet. And that video, or that business, was about translation. Now, we all know today what's happened with artificial intelligence translation. It's just exploded. But at the time, And they were trying to solve the translation problem. But it wasn't a translation issue. I hope you don't hear that guy's lawnmower. I hope it's nice and quiet. It wasn't, the translation issue wasn't their niche, and they'd been spending a lot of time on that area. Their niche was a QR code with a T in the center of it. Because you can translate most things, but if you want to translate a piece of marketing material, or you want to translate something that's a really important document that needs to be translated properly, not okay, you know, it's significantly better than AI. You need some way in which the customer knows that they can QR code scan it and pull up the translations and read the human resources document or the legal document or the safety document. There's certain documents that have to be translated properly, and it's a live version. So it means that if you see something about that translation that's not perfect, you can edit it. Next time someone scans, there's a new version. They didn't know that, and so the niche was such a tiny, ridiculous thing. But the beautiful thing about that niche is that it was just a trademark, and with a trademark, it's just really easy to defend a trademark. So I think that's enough on niche right now. I'm going to move to protection, and that's like the moat, you could probably say. And moat comes in so many different flavors. And I just talked about one with trademark, but I'm going to first talk about brand. If you don't have a good brand, it's going to be difficult for you. You want to have something that distinguishes you in the market. Brand is like name. If you have a good name to the people around you, you're easy to remember. If you have a good name that's it's easy to, you want to say it. Like I met this guy and his name was Orson Lord. And I was like, dude, what a name. Like, it's a great brand. That name makes a difference. It was called the Facebook and now it's Facebook. Apple's a really great example of it. It's just it's a friendly name. If you think about Apple, it doesn't have you elicit an idea of pretty computers that are really reliable, but that's what the name says. So it's super important, brand, but it's one of those things it's nuanced. It's something you got to look at. Like for instance, Bronze Betty is not, I would say, is not quite the brand that I was looking for, and I named it after a statue that looks like Betty. The technology company, which was called Red Dog Technology, wasn't quite the right brand, purely because people would call it Red Dog Technologies. So naturally they were changing it. Now if I'd changed it just to Red Dog, that would have been fantastic. And that comes to the next step, which is that I own reddog.com.au, but I didn't own reddog.com. And domain is important. If you don't have a top-level TLD or .com, it's going to be more challenging to sell it globally. So if you're looking for brand, having a .com is super important. Now, that's not as important as it was 5 or 6 years ago. There's other top-level domain names now, but you certainly want to have one that's a top level. An XYZ or a .co is a good example of something like that, but it's not as good as a .com. So brand is one of those, well, the name is a really important thing. And then, well, what does your brand talk about? Bronze Betty, so it sounds a little irregular is probably what I would say. It's not quite where I would like it to be. I have another brand name called Wilsana, and I think that if I had thought about it again, I probably would have called the business Wilsana. And I'll tell you why, because people think that Bronze Betty, some of them do, is they think it's a bronzing lotion, tanning lotion. And that just comes down to planning things out, planning out what the story is. What's this story you've got to create? And that's, the next step. I'm going to leave brand where it is because I'll probably revisit it again at some point in other videos. The story really matters. And You've got to have if you think about a business as a human being, and you can use human psychology in which to do this, because business is about people. If you haven't got a business story that's relatable or interests people, it's going to be a challenge. So you want to have a name that has people think of it as this thing. Like Google is a thing. It exists. It's separate to the founders. It's the founders founded it. Like Facebook was, built by Zuckerberg or was founded by Zuckerberg, but that doesn't mean that Facebook is Zuckerberg. Facebook's its own thing. Apple's its own thing. It's not Steve Jobs. It's not Wozniak. So the name is important, the brand is important, and then the story. What person are you birthing into the world? There's this movie called Failure to Launch, and it's a really good example of how human beings don't launch out of their own family. And it's also a really great example of how businesses cannot launch out of their founders' minds. You really want to create a compelling story that combines niche and brand together to form this really important thing that you can let go. And I'll use as an example, I wrote a book called Art of Gaslighting. And I wrote it because I wanted to read a book about how to gaslight people, because I couldn't work out why some people were so effective at getting other people to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do. And there wasn't a book like it. And what I also realized was that when I went to read a book about recover from gaslighting, I was like, well, I don't want to recover. I want to know how they did it. Like, I want to know how the hell I got my ass kicked. How the hell do so many people get their ass kicked by this technology? It's got to be communication. There's something about human beings that we don't know. And I wrote it that way because when I tested it, when you say to people, you got to recover from gaslighting, well, they often say, I didn't gaslight. I didn't get gaslighted, or I don't gaslight. But if you write a book on how to gaslight and people read it, they often go, oh, I do that. Or, oh, that happened to me. And now they're interested. Now they're learning about gaslighting. And now they're discovering how to gaslight. But what's really interesting about a book on how to gaslight is that everyone who reads it, who's a reasonable person, who's not doing that extreme level, take away your ability to function in society, or for your own good, everyone who isn't that stops gaslighting in their way that they were doing it. But they learn something new, and they start to get intentional about what they say and do. That's a niche. That's a story. That's a thing that sits out there in the world. Now that's the book. Now what? What do you build around a book like that? It's got a great brand name. It's got a really specific niche in a market and a lot of people talk about gaslighting today. Now what? Now you've got to create something that has it stand on its own 2 feet. And I looked at that and realized that coaching programs are really important, like coaching and training programs. And I did this in conversations with lots of people, for human resources, for organizations, really, for human resources professionals. And the reason that that's important is because organizations lose lots of money from psychological manipulation. And organizations psychologically manipulate their customers, and the customers don't like that. You could smell when something's off. And so I created programs for that. There's a program on how to gaslight people. There's a program on how to deal with people who gaslight. There's a program on knowing whether you're a good, how badly gaslighted you really are. There's a program that's called Bare Metal, and that program I offer to leaders and entrepreneurs who, I guess, want to have the most extreme psychological training they could, you could ever imagine. That creates something that allows me to build something that stands on its own 2 feet, as a story on its own. I can train other people to lead these programs. I can select the best of these people who come out from corporations and want to learn for their own business, take it back, share this knowledge, write up programs on how to deal with gaslighting, and they can come and work for Art of Gaslighting and deliver these programs. And then at some point, I can create something that then it gets sold to a coaching and training organization in a very, very unique niche that's, it's got at least 20 or 30 years to run. The art of gaslighting could run programs for people for decades. And I think it's going to get more prevalent as people stop working than less. So that standing on its own 2 feet is super important. Now, how do you do that? You start to, people talk about this thing of who's going to buy your business? And that's one of the first questions you should be asking yourself. And it should help you formulate the story, this sort of this human being, having a child and letting it off into the world. Who's going to buy it? If you think about it, who's going to be this person's spouse? What's the best fit? You want to think about that. Who are you going to sell this business to? Because if you can't sell it, it's generally going to be about you or the founders. And that doesn't mean you have to sell a business. It just means that you probably want to consider, well, who am I going to sell it to? So that you create something that's not codependent on you. Because I see that a lot with people who build a business. The business becomes codependent, or the business owner thinks that the business can't operate without them. And that is also a huge mistake. And it's one of the reasons that I built Bronze Betty, because I have no natural ability in Bronze Betty, other than creating the niche part where I got on a motorbike and rode 40 hours in 3 days on it. And anyone who's ridden in Indonesian traffic knows that riding 40 hours in 3 days in Indonesian traffic is just insane. Even I will admit that. But you've got to, I built it because I didn't have any natural ability, so I had to work out, how do I build something for everyone else? I have to hire everyone else in. There's only some things that I can do at Bronze Betty. There's very little that I can do with my own natural ability. It's a super important thing to look down. Now, would I recommend for you to build your first business as something that you have no natural ability in? No, I do not recommend that. But you certainly should consider that you should never work in the business. You should only ever work on it, which means that at some point, your natural ability needs to be taken out of the business and you need to put someone in there who has a similar level of natural ability. And you'd be surprised how many people want to work in a business. They do not want to build one. If you think that it's going to be difficult to find someone with your level of skill for a reasonable price, I think you're going to be very surprised. And if you're not, there's something wrong inside of your way that you've built the business. The pricing's not right, the products, there's something missing. Or it's not profitable enough. And there's plenty of businesses that only succeed to the level at which the founder allows. And the founder can't tell. They have no idea. So you want to build a business that leverages your natural abilities, because you're essentially giving it a leg up. Just like, if you've got a house and a car and food and a job and, you've educated, your child is going to have, those things going for it as well. You're going to be able to share that with your child. But if you don't have those things, it's going to be significantly harder for your child to succeed. So you're giving the business a leg up. And I'd be thinking about your own niche. What are your things that you're exceptionally good at? And most people have a couple of things they're exceptionally good at. Some people are really pretty. Some people are really photogenic. In real life, they might not look great, but on camera, they might look sensational. I know people that they look average. They're averagely educated. They're all these things that doesn't seem, this incredible thing on the paper, but you put them in front of a camera and people want to buy from them. And why? They can't tell you. That's their niche. Some people are really articulate. Some people are super smart. Some people have a great voice. Some people have great eyes. Some people are great runners. Some people are great, singers. There's a plethora of things that you can be exceptional at, or that's your niche. And if you're not aware of those things, you won't know how to give your business a leg up. You also won't know where you're subsidizing your business. So if you're very exceptional at a particular thing, it might be challenging to find someone who's of a similar skill set. So for instance, the guy that I was talking to you about, he's just sensational on camera, it's sort of easy for him not to find a replacement. He just goes, well, I can do it. What does it matter? I make huge sums of money. I'm very successful at what I do. Do I want to sell my business? Nah. And look, you can be that way. I say aim bigger. I say, how do you make this thing explode? I think he should be looking for someone who's just as good as him at selling. YouTube channels are now doing this, where they're bringing in other presenters instead of just themselves. And I get that that's from a longevity perspective. So, to recap, find your niche, and then really you put that inside of the planning for the business. I'm not telling you right now that you should have built a business. I'm saying to you that it should still be part of the planning. And then you want to look at product and how you deliver it. Now, this is a really interesting one. A friend of mine, he developed an electronic lock. It's a very fancy way of locking electrical cabinets, utility cabinets, anything to do with people wanting access to stuff. And it was a fantastic product and quite cutting edge. And a Saudi Arabian government corporation was using it. They would actually had commissioned them to build more of these. And there was some investors flying out to invest in the business, and they needed about $2 and a bit mil Australian. Oh no, American. $2 and a bit million American to get them over the hump. When you're manufacturing, you've got to get yourself over the gap between the cost of spooling up manufacturing and then getting paid for the product. And the investors were coming out to give them this money, and they were going to take about 30% of the business. And he said to me, can you come and look at this business model and tell me what you think? Are we leaving anything on the table? And I immediately saw that they'd made the mistake of thinking that what they're selling is a product, when in actual fact, they're not selling a product, they're selling a solution. And that solution was that they want, this government corporation was sick of issuing keys. What they wanted was electronic access, and they wanted a really high-tech electronic access that worked wirelessly. And because some of these cabinets, there was no power, or if there was, it wasn't suitable for the lock itself. But you get problems, you get warranty issues, you get, it goes out of, the average viable life of a product gets to the end of it, it stops working. People need to go out and actually use them. The battery goes flat, needs to be, recharged. There's a plethora of things that they'd missed. And what I said to him was that they'd made a mistake to think that selling the product was the good idea, because that was actually the barrier to entry. Their customers didn't want to buy 5,000 locks straight up. Their customers wanted to pay a monthly fee every month and have the software provided so they can manage the access, everything, and the updates and the warranties and the new locks, and so they could add new locks, and they could, all these sorts of things. So when we did that, the business was worth $96 million US. It went from being worth about 9.2 at the best, down to 6 at the absolute worst, to being worth 96 million. Because now you're looking at as a solutions business, a regular, reliable income like a bond. That makes a huge difference. And their product stopped being the lock. It was the solution itself. And they had to think end to end. And what it did was it gave them breathing room, because now no longer did they have to sell a finished product. They could sell a product with the required number of features that was necessary, and then add on new features. But what was even cooler was that by looking at this, what they realized was that other customers had come to them and they wanted solutions as well. Mobile phone companies want to sell product and access to their networks reliably and regularly. So this was a perfect solution. So they quickly worked out there was another 10 products they could sell, and each one of those products was worth about $100 million, if you were to sell it, and about $10 to $15 million of reliable, revenue a year, and about 12% coupon rate. So it was a pretty decent return, to government customers. And what it also does is it means that people have to pay, because sometimes governments just go, well, we're not paying. And if they can get away with it, they will. But if they're having to pay a reliable income, you're getting paid. And if the product stops working, if they don't, they generally pay. And it's a great way to work together as a symbiosis. So that's another one. What product are you selling? And that's that. It's not quite niche, but it certainly is down that road. Like their niche was this unique electronic lock, which was probably going to be copied quite quickly, which is not a problem, because if you find a solution that's much better, let's say for instance, someone comes along that's much smarter than you and invents this incredible electronic lock, you can quite literally just go and buy it. Or you can work out what makes it incredible and see if you can use around it. Because patents are a real problem. But if you've got a customer with 5,000 of your locks paying a reliable monthly fee, and a competitor comes along and builds something that's better than you, you can buy that and implement it in your own solution. Customer keeps paying the same amount. Maybe they pay a little bit more because it's better. Maybe it gets cheaper for you, so they keep paying and your income increases, or your margin increases. So product matters, and it really matters. It's surprising how much it matters, and then how you deliver it really matters as well. And so I would say those are the cornerstones to developing a really successful business. One that's a very high quality, it scales, the problem is big enough. And if you've got those things right, the other things will generally fall into line, or they're not terrible to fit. If you have a bad team, that's not a good thing. You really do want to select the right team. And the team won't be right if they can't get those things, that I just described, all working together in this beautiful unison, this beautiful story. So you can generally gauge the quality of your team based on the quality of this business that's being birthed into the world. So hopefully that has given you something. And I've probably forgotten some things, and I'll probably come back and create another video again in the future about this. But if you've got any questions, just throw them downstairs, down in the comments, or message me, DM me, and happy businessing. Bye.